Senior Colonel Zhou Bo, welcome to the program. What role will China play in the overall discussion at the Munich Security Conference?
China would have a strong presence at the Munich Security Conference because our State Councillor, Wang Yi, would be there, and the former Vice Foreign Minister, Fu Ying, would be there, and she also came with a delegation, including myself. So I believe Chinese voice would be heard. At this time, when the world seems to be totally divided, it is critically important for the world to know how China thinks and how China might act, because nowadays everything is associated with China, even things that seem to have nothing to do with China. For example, about this war in Ukraine, China certainly has nothing to do with this war, but China's role is often talked about. For example, which side China would take, and could China play a mediating role, or even would the war in Ukraine provoke a similar attack by mainland China on Taiwan? So all these issues, be they right or wrong, are just associated with China, because China today is much stronger. Right. Therefore, how China thinks really matters.
The China-U.S. relations, particularly regarding security. Earlier, the balloon thing has been very much used as a rhetorical war against China. At least that's believed by the Chinese official side. So now, Senior Colonel Zhou, how do you see Washington is likely to advocate more on this area to its allies at the Munich Security Conference?
I think the atmosphere probably would have to change a little bit, because the Chinese position on this is very clear. It was an accident. It was caused by force majeure, and we have expressed regret. And I believe, since we have already expressed regret, the United States should not make a fuss about it. And it turned out that the shot down the balloon, which clearly is not acceptable, but they now seem to have changed the tone to say that the balloons that follow up were not Chinese. So actually, things are getting a bit more complicated or even murky. But I believe this is what Chinese government has been suggesting, to deal with this in a professional manner. You see, what I can think of is some other rules that we two countries already have, such as rules of encounters, both in air and at sea. So that means whenever we have a close encounter between aircraft or between ships, we have to deal in a professional way, that is with good airmanship and a good seamanship. Probably we need to sit with the United States, with other stakeholders, to establish certain rules. Because in aviation industry, we have a lot of rules. And in maritime domain, we also have a lot of rules. But in this area, we don't have so many rules. Therefore, we need to sit down and discuss about them.
At what level do you see now as an academic the discussions should be at between China and the United States about this?
Currently, there is no military contact between the two sides. This is a result of Nancy Pelosi's visit. After her visit, the Chinese side has announced to cancel all military contacts with each other. But I believe the ball is really in the court of the United States. Because this is apparent, unless and until Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, we in the PLA would not, have a large-scale drill around the island. And the next question is, would Kevin McCarthy visit Taiwan as he pledged? Because if he does, I can't just speak on behalf of the Chinese military, but I just assume, even in theory, China's response has to be stronger, because we already have responded. And if this kind of a provocation continues, we have to act with more strength. Therefore, this kind of a complicated relationship has to be managed. One of the things to be seen is whether Wang Yi would meet Antony Blinken at Munich. We do not know yet, but I believe probably they will, because certainly Mr. Blinken would not want to come to China being overshadowed by this whole things about the balloon. He would come to China to discuss about more serious issues. With this the balloon thing very much discussed or dealt with already, I believe, especially in the third country, he probably would find it appropriate to discuss about balloon and other more serious matters with Mr. Wang Yi.
Do you consider it a test already of both sides' capabilities to deal with one another? According to Ms. Sherman from the State Department earlier, that both sides, China and the United States, were in contact and were communicating with one another over the past weeks regarding this incident, quote unquote, and also others.
Yes, we are in contact with one another, but the point is that we probably need to have a more regularized contact with one another, because the world would really have a big relief just to see this kind of talks going on, right, between the two largest economy. I don't know what you might be talking, but once I see you talking to each other rather than shouting at each other, this is a big relief for the world. And this is why China always encourage cooperation rather than competition. I know people have different mentalities, but which sounds more assuring? Is it a cooperation or is it a competition? Of course it is a cooperation. And I think China was taken by the United States as a primary competitor as early as 2018. But it's good that China today is still talking about cooperation rather than competition. And I believe this kind of attitude would actually make the world safer, because President Biden talked about even extreme competition. Extreme competition makes people, nervous, yeah. So because people might consider, well, if the competition is already extreme, how far is it away from a conflict? That makes people feeling nervous.
Now, Senior Colonel Zhou, in Washington, you know very well that there have been talks about the timetable in which likely the United States militarily will deal with China on the issue of Taiwan. These, of course, are not official. What's your view about where U.S. stands today? What does that mean for the Chinese military?
Well, I think the United States is domestically divided, to make it simple. Because apparently you're referring to the remarks of a four-star general who talked about the probability of mainland China attacking Taiwan in 2025. But it's interesting for me to point out that throughout his speech, we could not find any evidence or statistics to support his idea. What he has is only his gut feeling, right? But if it is just a gut feeling, should you just tell all your staff what you are feeling is just a gut feeling? And he's not agreed upon by his superior, that is the Pentagon. Pentagon doesn't agree with him, and the Pentagon expressed its a disagreement. So that is very much interesting for me as a former officer to find out if someone says something, especially in the military, Yeah, he has to follow certain kind of rules. He has to be disciplined. And could a four-star general just say something out of his God feelings?
How do you see, Senior Colonel Zhou, others present at the Munich Security Conference going to maintain their interest in discussing both with China and the United States about security in our world today?
I believe Munich Security Conference is always, telling the world its perspective from a Western point of view. That clearly is the case. So from if you look at the world from Munich, of course, you're very much concerned with a war that is raging on, not so far away. And then you want this kind of a strengthening of a transatlantic relationship, which is being strengthened. Of course, you're also worried about a rising power far, far away. That is China. So many important people, including heads of state, would come here to discuss about all these matters that are concerned with everybody. But I personally do not like the theme of this year's conference. It seems that they are just trying to put this kind of democracy versus autocratic revisionist rivalry as a focus. I don't believe there is such a kind of a rivalry at all, because I don't believe there is what they called as a rule-based international order. Yeah, the international order is composed of so many things, including different culture, different religions, different social system, different national identity. So you cannot just describe the order as a kind of rule-based order, which means a Western rules-based order. If you believe in this, basically it will hurt you, because it's kind of narcissism. If you see the world is not, moving in this way, if you see Western democracy actually is in decline, then you become a narcissist. Then you would draw such conclusions like democracy versus autocratic revisionist.
How dangerous do you see is it that ideology will hijack the real concrete discussions of security in an ever more fragmented world?
The West, led by the United States, is actually hyping on such kind of ideological confrontation. Yeah, as the United States believe China is the primary competitor, while Europe would take China as a systemic rival. And what does that mean? Even they themselves are not fully clear. But I don't believe, the world will really buy such kind of allegation. When we talk about the world, it's not just the West. It's also about the rest. In the Asia Pacific, it is at least true to say that people do not want to take sides so easily. I'm talking even about American allies, because people just would like to take sides on issues rather than taking sides with certain countries. I believe this is the fact with American allies. I believe even countries like Japan or Australia would want to secure the strong economic ties with China, as they won't make easy sacrifices.
Senior Colonel Zhou Bo, thank you so much.